All right, everybody, welcome back to the podcast. My name is Zane Burr.
And I'm Aaron Boldman. And still missing, because it's still actually the same day,
Silas.
we're recording 2 in a row. Just to be
Don't give that
transparent,
away. I took my shirt off. So I think it's a different day.
we're going to go ahead and finish out the topic from last week,
That's right.
which was how to enlist outside help, or should I enlist outside help? We can start with, I guess we don't have any life updates because we literally just sat here. So anyway, we'll just jump right in. We do have in theory, we have a question somebody wrote in, so that'll be interesting. So that'll be from a listener. So we'll address it because it actually relates to the topic. So last time we were talking about when and how to enlist outside help, and we said take the sort of the example given in Matthew 18, which was go to them privately, then go to them with another, and then in Matthew 18 go with the church, right? So we're saying you've been instructing your child privately, but they're not getting it, they're not listening. Right? You've tried, and and they're still being belligerent, or they're still developing that friendship, or whatever they're doing that you're not wanting them to do. Enlist outside help, which could be who?
Be the church. It can be just other family members, maybe
Yep.
that are in your circle, friends. Really, anybody that, like you said, have a vested interest in the family. And
Yep. And what does vested interest mean?
meaning like they have a reason to care about that outcome of your family.
Very good.
Yeah,
That's the big one, right? Yeah.
Mhm.
And then lastly, then you enlist the help of a program, or maybe like there's an aunt or uncle who is same page as you guys, same worldview, who lives in a different state, away from the environment, right? Doesn't necessarily have to be a program. Sometimes you have family or grandparents, or even we actually have a student at our school right now whose brother is actually living with one of the elders of their church.
Mm.
So he was needing help as well. And they were able to use that resource. So that's good.
Kind of
So-
like in the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
Exactly. Yes. I'm not sure. That was one show I never really got into.
But
so I don't know.
his mom, he was born and raised in West Philadelphia, and then he was getting in trouble with the kids on the schoolyard, so she sent him to live with his uncle in Bel Air.
There you
and
go.
They set him straight.
And that's
So,
Will Smith, right?
That's Will Smith.
I actually like. Well, he's probably. I don't know if he's a terrible person or not. I kind
He's
of like.
kind
to watch
of,
his stuff.
he's had a hard life as a rich actor. So.
He married a crazy person, so she seems to have some interesting things with her life. So who you marry matters. All right, so we were on the last section of what is a good telltale sign that I need to enlist outside help, and these are like the more dangerous situations. These are the kind of things where you're thinking, okay, as the steward of my home, as the man of the house, or as the matriarch, or the mom is like, the mom and dad are making these decisions, and they're just like, these things are going to hurt all of us, right? We're going to go through those things. So we'll start off with maybe one of the ones that can lead to worse things, and that's the friendships, right? What kind of friendships do they have? So there's a verse in the scripture, and we had Nathan West. Shout out to Nathan West. He's one of the guys that works for me, who has a mind like a steel trap. He remembers everything. He could tell me where this verse is. I don't know, but it talks about bad company corrupts good morals. And what does that verse mean, Zane? Bad company corrupts good morals.
I mean, there's a lot of variations of that verse, I think, that float around. Like who you are is who you hang out with.
Yep.
You're the sum of your five closest friends. I've heard all those little phrases before, but basically it means, you're going to take on the characteristics and the values of the people that you value.
That's good. So we talked about with those friendships, right? We said bad company corrupts good morals. That would be through lewd speech. Now, this can also be this is a weird sometimes the friendships are what they're putting in their head through their music, or through their music movies, or through their social media stuff, right? That's their friend group as well. It's kind of a weird thing, but our society now, they have so much access to that you have to see that as a as almost like a living entity. And especially now that with AI, it's so weird. It really is like a living entity because they can interact with it. It's become their comfort. And sadly, because of the way AI works, it really does sort of tell you what you want to hear. So those kids are going to get reaffirmed. They've got these, even these things like AI girlfriends. So friendships can be also too much screen time.
Mm-hmm.
So laziness from friends, they have a friend group that's lazy, rude. Like these people come over to your house and they're just like little punks, and it's like, okay, they're not stopping these relationships, and it's going to ruin them. And obviously, delighting in foolishness, at its worst case, right, gang type involvement or gang behavior, and we've had students come with the parents, they see that as a legitimate, like, this is starting to happen to my son. Please help us, right? Those are dangerous situations where not just your son could be possibly be in trouble, but even members of the family. So those are things that are like, okay, if his friendships are to the point of where we're afraid, we need to get outside help.
Yeah.
And it might be, you might jump straight to step 3 because maybe you just didn't see it coming, or maybe it's like he was a lot deeper than you realized, and he comes back with the police one day, or possibly got into a pretty rough fight with the situation he was in. Right now, all of a sudden, you're woke up to, oh my goodness, we got to act today. So you go straight to step 3. What about falling for inappropriate boys or girls? Infatuation. They're blinded, right? They're not protecting their purity. So in those types of situations where you're like, you've gone to them as a parent. Let's say it's your daughter and she's 14. She's got this 17-year-old boyfriend who maybe he's really not that bad of a kid. So you're not necessarily like against him, but you're just like, they're young, right? There's no way they're going to be married anytime within the next, 2 to 4 years. So all this time they're wanting to spend together is just going to lead to fornication, which in your mind, you're thinking, okay, there's pregnancy. There's the defrauding of our daughter, right? Even if they don't get pregnant, it's like that matters, but it's not like the only thing that matters. Her purity matters. So if they're not willing to listen and they're in an illicit relationship that you've said you don't want, okay, that's a reason to jump in and say, okay, step 2 or step 3, we need to enact this. And it's going to seem harsh because all the other kids at school, they'll have it, but it's just, how blind do you want to be, right? How deep do you want to stick your head in the sand? For me, when I was growing up in high school, I would say this was definitely the situation I was in. I was definitely being um, allowed the freedom, right, to ruin myself. Now they didn't know the details, and I'm glad they didn't, because especially my mom is now would break her heart. Mom, if you're listening, just fast forward this part. Um, but my parents loved me, but it's they'd asked me a couple of times. Mom specifically, I can remember I'd come home way past curfew, and she'd be waiting out front on the swing, which I thought, you see when you pull in the driveway, it's like, oh, there she is. Crap, I'm in trouble. And I always hated that. But she was trying, right, to be a good parent, trying to like, hey, what are you doing? Where are you at? And I would just lie and go to bed. And it's like, that's, she probably should have taken steps to like intervene, right? Because even now, right, 35 years later in a marriage, those decisions still affect my life. And it's like, those don't magically just go away. Yes, they get better. And yes, your life moves on. And yes, you can be forgiven and all that. And but God allows us to reap what we sow. And that's a rough like reality. So falling for an inappropriate boy or girl, infatuation, protective purity, not coming home as asked, and refusing to be held accountable. If that's where your kid is, that's a bad sign. That's something you got to also jump in on and say, no, So you set a curfew, or you say, hey, be home by 10 o'clock or whatever, and they're not. And this continues on, and you've grounded them already. And then you realize, well, if I ground them and they're not even home, what difference does it make? Right? It doesn't make a difference. And that might be a really quick, like, thing to keep in mind on the grounding, or on the curfew. I'm sorry. Curfews are only as good as the event. I mean, I remember, and this is something that really like got me as a kid when I was in high school. My mom and dad had curfews for all of us. That was fine, but it would be like 11 in the weekdays, and then midnight on the weekends or whatever. The problem with the curfew is, what's the event, right? We've never set curfews for our kids because it's like, well, where are you going? Oh, we're going to this, this music festival, or we're going to this, a movie, or we're going to this Bible study at so-and-so's house. Okay, great. What time's it start? 6 o'clock. What time's it over? 8:30. Oh, well, your curfew isn't 11. So now you got 2.5 hours to do what? And that's where the problem starts, right? So you got to have like the ability to say to your child, you're regulating their time. What are they doing with that time? That's your job as mom and dad. So don't give them just the carte blanche. This is your curfew, because you'll end up like they'll be late for their curfew because the movie they saw at 7 ended at 8:30. The curfew's 11, and they've been out fooling around with each other in the car for the last 2.5 hours. Now they're late coming home and you're worried about the curfew. And reality is, well, what were they doing for those 2.5 hours? That's the problem. So if that makes sense. Makes sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I think that's good because I think there's a lot of presets that parents just have walking into parenthood, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I need to come up with a curfew. I
Yep.
need to come." But it's really what you're saying is we want to know what, like, account for that time. We need to know intimately as parents what our kids are doing, and who they're spending time with,
Yep.
and that goes back to like the boyfriend girlfriend situation, because I think that's another thing that parents don't always think completely through. They're like, oh well, every kid has a boyfriend or a girlfriend in high school, um, and maybe don't take that relationship as too serious. But a lot of times we see those relationships are the ones that these problems get introduced, like the
Yep.
bigger,
100%.
more difficult behaviors. So you have to be aware. You can't, yeah, as you said, stick your head in the sand
Yep.
and think everything's gonna work out.
If you raise them up, right, you disciple them from the time they're little kids to the idea of events rather than like these time parameters, they don't buck it. They're used to that. That's normal. Um, when a kid says, we're just going to go hang out with friends," it's like, mm, that's you're just asking for trouble. You can do it. And I remember, like, because again, I grew up in the '80s, so it's like, the big thing was then on TV or like the Fresh Prince of Bel Air. Hey, we're gonna go hang out at the mall, right? And I lived in Southern California, and there was a mall. I hated shopping even in those days. It's like, well, I would never go hang out at the mall. But if I said I was gonna go hang out with my friends, all that meant was whatever girl I happened to be with at the time, we were just gonna go find somewhere to be alone and just, basically fornicate. And that sounds terrible, but it's reality. And I think the reality is, what were you doing? You know, what do you think your daughter's doing? What do you think your son's doing? It's like they're the same as we were. So I think have events, have accountability. So when they're saying, no, I'm not coming home when you asked. No, I'm not going to tell you where I'm going. They don't want accountability. They can't stay in your house because you're basically, like we said a couple of weeks ago, you're being a willing party to their death by letting it continue. Can't do it. Running away and not allowing the parents to provide food and like protection, right? So the running away is very similar to just not coming home. But like if your kid's at the stage where they're running away and they're gone for like a day, 2 days, you need outside help. You're just waiting for a phone call of, your kid's in jail or your kid's been found dead. I mean, I hate to be that blunt, but it's like, what do you think's going to happen? When a kid runs away at Future Men, it's like all hands on deck. I hate it. It's the scariest thing ever because I know I can't control anybody. Absolutely no one can we control. They're just always constantly weighing out what are the consequences, what are the parameters of where I'm at, like how much freedom do I have, right? Kids are always thinking this way, and most kids willingly submit because they want food, they want a bed, they want like a shower the next day. They want some of the amenities or comforts of home. There are some kids that just they don't care. Rather than any authority, they'd rather be breaking into a car to find money to buy food, or going into a restaurant and just steal, or a grocery store and just stealing stuff. Right? They're okay with that. That's how bad they've gotten to where no accountability. If that's your son or daughter, you really are definitely continue to do steps 1 and 2, or make sure you've done step 1 and 2. Step 3 is probably going to be on your horizon, and you're going to have to find like somewhere that's sadly more of a lockdown type situation to where they don't have the ability to run away, and they're going to have to be forced to sort of submit for a season. And Lord willing, they'll get it right. They'll break them, so to speak, because the alternative to that is just it's jail. I mean, that's where they're heading. And I think some parents actually know this, and they're scared to death, as they should be. But other parents just keep thinking, well, it'll pass, it'll pass, it'll pass. My kid will be fine, and he might be. Right? I can think of some of the behaviors that my brothers and I were doing in high school, and it's like, especially one of my brothers. I mean, there were some pretty serious situations he was in because he wasn't willing to be held accountable by mom and dad, and it's like it really could have ended in disaster. I mean, and he knows this, and I love this brother, and it's like some of the things he was doing scared me bad in those days. And he's still alive, right? And he's walking with the Lord. He loves the Lord. It's all great now, but the collateral damage at the time doesn't always end with a good story, right? Some kids, the collateral damage will be, well, they just failed out of high school, or she got pregnant, or, well, they got a DUI on their license, or, oh, they were, they spent a little bit of time in jail, or whatever it is, or we broke relationships for a couple of years and they came back around. Well, praise God, they came back around. Other kids, it's even worse than that. So these are pretty big telltale signs.
I think it's probably good for us to point out, like, we probably have a lot of genuine, like, Christian families that are watching our show,
Right.
and wanting to do the best job that they can. And to have to resort to these consequences, a lot of parents are probably going to struggle with that because they're thinking, well, I want to get to the heart of my child, right? Like,
Yep.
this is going to be antithetical to that. This is going to work against me trying to get to my kid, because I think normally we think the way to do that is to be friends with them, build like a
Just a relationship only.
happy relationship here, and I think that's a lot of people's natural approach, to these issues, is like, okay, well, I don't want to overreact. I don't
Right.
want to, like, do anything huge that's going to make them want to listen to me less, right? And so I think what we want to say is, you know, they're going to take advantage of that. Sadly, they know the parents that have that heart, and they're going to take advantage of it. And that's not to say that you shouldn't have, a compassionate, gentle heart towards your kid. You should, but you also need to live in the reality of, their heart is hard right now. They're not going to respond to, you giving them grace in the moment, and often, like, if they're as far gone as what we're talking about, right? Like, maybe in earlier stages they will respond to that, but most of the time, when they're to the degree that we're talking about, it is going to take something drastic to wake them up.
Yep. That's good. Really good. The next one, this is gonna be tough to hear, but pornography. Where and how is it? How is this sexual energy that this kid is getting from this porn? How's it being expressed? How's it being channeled? So, do you need to enlist outside help in the topic of pornography? So you've gone to them individually, and then you keep finding it. Right? You've gone to them with a vested interest person. You keep finding it. You've got to enlist outside help. You can't let this go, because there's going to be like and I've seen this in the last 12 years at Future Men. This has been like a category of kid that we get. They've molested their siblings, especially if it's a homeschool situation where the family is like, man, we're taking all these steps of like raising our kids, being involved in our kids. We love our kids, and they do. But porns come in, and porn is a tough one. I mean, we've had porn come into our home about 2 or 3 times in the last like 10 years. And man, we do everything we can, and it still comes in, right? And we've been so blessed by God that we've caught it early. Or you have like, another situation that sort of like porn, and that's voyeurism. And that like comes from porn typically, right? Porn usually is what wakes a kid up to those sexual urges that we're hoping to avoid until they're, ready for those, when they're in a marriage. But welcome to reality. If your kids woke up to it, you got to root it out. So that's a dangerous situation to where you're like, you've got to take action. You can't just think, well, he's getting caught with porn every other day or 3 times this last month. He's just hiding it better and hiding it better. It's like, you're done. You've got to get help. You've got to like enlist somebody else now. So think about you've got, even if it's just simply, and this would be a little bit like, so if you're a parent out there and your kid's listening to this podcast, this might be a little much, so you can just sort of screen a little bit. But like, if they're taking out their energy on someone else, right, through molestation of a sibling, right, obviously that's evil, and you've got to you got to nip that in the bud and protect the other kids. It's not just about your son that's watching the porn. It's you're protecting everybody else as well. You're also protecting your wife and your daughters from just being like looked at or having their undergarments, messed with, in terms of like, because the boys, when they start getting these urges and they're feeding it through pornography, it's like it wakes up all kinds of like behaviors.
And obviously, with behaviors like that, like there's legal ramifications that
Sure.
now take place. So you've got to, you know, protect the other family, and do what the law requires, as far as like, you know, reporting that stuff. But also, as a parent, like you have to realize like a one-time thing. You know, I think that's what most parents are wanting to think. Like, okay, this happened one time, so we confronted them and everything's good, right? And they're sorry for it. But if you don't take precautions, if you don't make sure that there's protection and boundaries in place moving forward, then how do you know that that's
Right.
the first time and the last time
And this is
that's
where
going
your
to happen?
discipleship is going to come in handy.
Yeah.
And this is where having somebody else with a vested interest involved is going to come in handy. And then look at even like just let's just say they're not like the other siblings are safe, and the kid's like he's using his pornography and he's just, I hate to use this word, but he's masturbating. He's like, he's pleasuring himself. That's not okay. That's not okay to let just happen, because what he's doing is, right, he's practicing to be single. He's practicing to not be satisfied with a future mate. And again, you're allowing something to happen that's going to like ruin part of his life. So your interaction isn't just like a physical safety thing, but it's also the betterment of your child. So at the Future Men, we have about a 12-week course on pornography that I teach, and it's like very blunt. It's very much like I show them what's at the end of that road. How does that going to look with a mate, right? You're just practicing to be divorced. You're practicing for singleness. And not that singleness is wrong, but it is wrong if you're single because you're so wrapped up in your little secret world of your mind, right? And pornography. So that's a huge one. So you've got to like act on it. Theft is one. You can't leave money on the counters at your home. If your kids are in charge of doing the laundry, let's say, and like you thought you had $20 in your pocket, now it's gone. People come to us and they're like, I have locks on my bedroom door. I have locks on, my study. They're basically living like a prisoner in their own home because their kids are stealing from them. And it's like, that's another situation where you've got to enlist outside help, because they're feeding their like lack of self-control for whatever they want. Could be just stupid stuff like candy or phones or clothing, right? But they're just getting instant gratification by stealing from you. They're going to end up in jail. I know it sounds crazy or extreme, but it's like, or maybe not jail, but they'll end up with like a record. They'll end up like not being trustworthy. They'll end up ruining marriages. I mean, you name it, it's going to happen. So theft is a big one.
Yeah, I think the big theme that you're talking about here is if it's happening in the home, it's going to happen outside the home
Oh, yeah.
eventually.
Yep.
Like they're under your protection now and your control to a certain extent. But someday they're going to turn 18. Someday they're going to be responsible legally, for themselves. And if you've just been, basically running, you know, protection on them for 5 years for these dangerous behaviors, you're helping them practice for real life. And when they go out there, and they start these behaviors start manifesting
Yep.
in actual relationships with other people, not actual like family relationships aren't real, but
No, I know what you mean. Yep.
but like yeah, like relationships outside the home, you don't have control anymore. You don't have the ability to intervene. Like you were saying, when like a kid runs away, it's like you don't have control of the people out there and who's going to sue and who's going to go to law enforcement
Yep.
and say something. So it's like you have to curb these things while you can.
Yeah, and it doesn't start at 14 stealing from cars, right? We had this kid. He was from North Carolina. I loved this kid. He was fun, but he was sticky fingers like Joe. I mean, this kid was like the worst thief I've seen forever. Terrible kid. And it's like when I was talking to his mom, it was like, yeah, as a little kid, it started with food, started with candy, started with like just the little things in the house, and it's like they never got it under control, and it just kept growing and growing. He's in jail now, right? And by the time I got to Future Men, it was like a day late, $1 short, which is so sad because it's like, man, what a neat like life. And I remember like taking this kid to his apprenticeship and just warning him, if you steal from them, you're gonna get in trouble, right? You're gonna ruin the apprenticeship. You're gonna get fired. There's gonna be consequences at Future Men, and it all led to eventually him not being able to stay at our program because he just the thievery, he needed to be in a lockdown. And as a minor, he was only like 16. He had 2 more years ahead of him. So you've got to just think, what am I creating here? What am I growing? What am I allowing to like happen to my kid? It's terrible. All right. I would say behavior influences on the siblings, right? Turning them off, turning them against mom and dad, right? So if you see like an older sibling, like, or even a middle-aged sibling, but they're mocking you to the other kids, they're violent to the other kids, right? They're hitting them. I mean, just think about what you would never allow any outsider to come do in your home that he's doing or that she's doing. If that's the case, you got to enlist outside help, right? Whether it's cussing you out, whether it's hitting your wife, whether it's being physically abusive to your children, or just emotionally defrauding them, or like manipulating them to like where mom's trying to do something in the school, and all the kids are sort of turning against her because of the one little ringleader, right? And you guys, if this is you, you know what it's like, you know what it feels like. You gotta take these steps of getting help. And again, first the church or a counselor or somebody, grandparent or uncle, whatever. And then, yeah, you may have to resort to a program. And I know it's extreme. And I know it may be costly, but it's like, this is your family. This is like, versus what? You didn't get another new car, or you didn't like, maybe a couple of years of no vacation, but it's like the other siblings are learning. They're learning like what will mom and dad put up with? What is allowable? And if you got a 16-year-old influencing an 11-year-old, you're thinking, oh my goodness, we got 7 more years of this. You won't last, right? You'll get to where you, sadly, like the Bible says, he who doesn't discipline his son hates his son, right? And that's what it means. You hate him because in a year or two, you're literally going to feel the hate. And it's like, it's not that you don't want them alive or you wish they hadn't been born or whatever, but your life is so distraught and so ruined by this behavior, you just want nothing to do with them. And so don't go there. Prevent it. The obvious ones, drug use, alcohol use, right? Again, they're going to find stuff. Maybe you're alcohol, right? And it's not a sin to have alcohol in your house, but it's like, let's just say you were the cause. You had some wine, or you had, whatever in your maybe you have a liquor cabinet even. But your kid gets oh, I want to try that. And they do. And you go and correct them and they stop. Or they mostly stop and they're willing to do your consequences. Great. You're good. It's your job still. You don't have to abdicate that authority. But if it's a drug problem, which most drugs are going to be a problem because, they're addictive by nature, and you find it and you find it again, and they're continuing those friendships, it's like, okay, I got to cut it off, or resign yourself to, I'm going to lose my kid. And let's just say you're a household where your kid's 16 or 17, and you have one child left. He's the only one home. Maybe he was an only child, or maybe he's just last in line. And I'm describing him. If I were you, and you can keep the marriage like healthy, and you can support your wife and not wear her out with this, yeah, don't enlist outside help other than like the counselors or church help. You don't need to send him away, because in reality, he's still with you. You'll still have a chance to like pour into him and disciple him, and no one else is being influenced. So that matters too. You got to weigh out the situation. But sadly, most of us, there are other siblings, or there are like he's abusing the wife. I mean, because a lot of times this comes with physical, emotional abuse from the kid to the parent, and it's like, well, your wife is first. That's got to come first. You got to protect her above all else. So, sex is another one, obviously, where it's like, okay, I know that my son's having sex with his girlfriend, or my daughter's having sex with her boyfriend. You got to call it what it is. It's molestation. I mean, it just is. They're both willing. They're both, culpable, so to speak. And they're like, well, it's consensual. It's like, it's irrelevant. They're kids. They're not married, right? Call it what it is. Right? The Bible calls it fornication. I would call it, you're molesting somebody's daughter. Because even if you're not having sex, you're just doing everything up to that point. I think we're just afraid to use hard words. We're afraid to like call it what it is. And we sort of like, well, everybody does it. No, I get it, son. I had that problem too. And it's like, well, you're setting them up for major problems later on in life. So if you know about it and they're not willing to take the step 1 or step 2 or step 3 to change, you may have to get to the point to where they have to leave the home. So
yeah, which I think that we're gonna probably get a lot of comments about that in
Probably.
particular.
Yep.
But I mean, the heart of what you're saying is like, you have to call sin sin. Like you can't dance around it. You can't sugarcoat it. You can't let yourself, because you feel like a hypocrite because you participated in
That's the
that when
biggest
you were a
problem.
kid.
Boom, right there. Yep. We're guilty.
Make excuses for your child because you know the truth. You know right from wrong as a parent, or you should. And if you don't say anything, you are a willing party to your child's death, like you were saying. So you have to call those things out, and it's hard. Um,
Really hard.
really hard.
Yeah.
In
Especially when you're a
relationships.
hypocrite. I've told my kids point blank. I mean, I don't go into detail of what I've done in the past, but I tell them all, even Angus, I've told, it's like, this is my sexual history and I regret it. It's horrible, right? But it's like, but that doesn't mean that now I allow you to walk down that same road. I'm more aware, right? And it's like your kids don't have to have these wonderful high school experiences of like the prom or one of those type of things. Like just think about what those typically mean. It's sort of like that again, sort of like setting a curfew, but no guidelines to what that curfew looks like in terms of why is the curfew 11, right? And thinking, oh, I really want my kid to experience these high school things. It's like, what did you do? What did the majority of your friends do? And like, yeah, your kid might be different. I understand that. And there could be like reasonable exceptions, and it's your decision. Because you will live with the consequences, not me, right? But we're just saying in general, we would say these are steps where you're probably on step 3. You probably need to enlist, like a program or something like that. We have a question from a one of our viewers, which I think is pretty cool because it actually relates to this. And I read the question earlier, and Gabriella, are you listening back there? Are you awake? He kind of related to this. I'm going to have him just really super quickly share, like, the question was, okay, so their kid is in their room all the time on screen time, messing with, whatever he's doing, video games or, YouTube or whatever he's doing, who cares? It's screen time, let's say. And mom tries to, get him to go outside or get him to like do something different, enlist, something else in life besides just his computer or his phone. And the comeback is always, this is my future. This is what I want to do. I want to be a programmer. I want to be a video game designer. And it's like, oh, okay, there's some truth
Or an
to that.
influencer. That's a big one.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And it's like, so the parents asking, well, do I take it away then? What do I do? Right? Because it seems like, well, it could be tied into their future, but he's 14 or 15 or she, right? So Gabe, when I read this question, you said, you started talking and I said, hey, save that because that might be good for our listeners to hear.
Yeah.
So introducing Gabriella.
Yeah. So, for a while there, I was struggling with having multiple different hobbies. Most of it was like tech related.
Yeah.
But there were some other things, as far as like designing and like engineering and stuff or even music. And it was really hard having so many hobbies to discern, okay, what needs to stay a hobby and what is actually going to produce a career.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of laying those all out on the table and just like saying, okay, what is a practical thing in life that you can see right now that actually is going to build a future that's going to support a family. And so there was a lot of things I enjoyed that I had to start letting go. Like, I used to do like 3D animations for like short films and stuff, but I was able to actually continue as far as in like the film industry and doing music and stuff, like audio engineering that helped with, this podcast and, some of the content we film for the Future Men.
Yeah. Well, slow down. Hang on. Say this, Gabe. Talk about like your dad, who's a wise man, right? Says, hey, son, get a job.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So he made you get a job.
Yes.
Unrelated to the podcast stuff, right? Or the tech industry. So what was your job?
Yeah, so there was multiple different ones. It was mainly like an amusement park,
Hotel.
a hotel.
And what'd you do at the hotel?
So a hotel, I kind of did almost everything.
Like maintenance.
So yeah,
and,
maintenance,
stuff.
and sometimes even cooking. In
Which
the
is great,
kitchen.
right?
Yeah,
That's
so I
all
learned
fine.
a lot of different
Yep.
skills, but
what were you thinking? Were you thinking I want to run a hotel someday?
no, not
No.
at all. So what was interesting is I was actually hired to do media marketing at the hotel, but I ended up not even being able to
Yeah.
touch it until
But you were wise enough. Let's be honest with this, right? To see, okay, there's an avenue where I might get to like to help develop, right, what I think are my skill sets. Because again, you're young, so it's like you think they're your skill sets. But you told me when Gabe first started applying for the internship here at Future Men, he was going to our church, and we were friends, sort of, just acquaintances. And he would tell me these are my desires, and at the same time, I'm like, man, we are so needing somebody with a brain in that area, right? And we don't have it. But Gabe was doing something, and this is what I think is I want the parents to hear. Gabe was praying, okay, God, where do you want me? And being frustrated, and even starting to answer some of the the frustrations with sin, doing things that were like off God's path, right? Doing things that like just distracted him from the reality of I feel like a failure. I'm not plugging in where I want to plug in. So it's like we start like as men, especially self-defeating. But you were praying. And the cool thing is, I think your father, God, right, steps in and says, hey, I want you to go do this. And it's like, it provides your room and board. It provides your all kinds of exposure to like doing what you think you love. And it's like, okay, is this who you are? Right? So it's like, it's a direction that's like actually legitimate, but you were able to put feet to it. If it was my 14-year-old son, and he's really good on computers, because some kids really are, I've got to be thinking as a dad, okay, I'll acknowledge that to a point, but in some ways, man, big deal. Welcome to the world of AI. Welcome to the reality of it's going to be really hard to break into this industry by the time my kids, 18, 19, 20, 21, right? It's going to be tough. I better make sure there's a good backup plan, right? So as a parent, when you're trying to discern, he won't get off the video games or something with the computer. Or yours wasn't that lame. Yours was like, oh, you're actually doing stuff, right? So, but your dad was still wise enough to say, but Gabe, you're a man, you need money.
Right. Even though I was creating good skills, I still needed something here in this moment.
For today.
Right.
Yeah.
To, be out in the world, having, a blue collar job and actually working, bringing home money, helping out around the house with the family. And that was kind of difficult starting off, was finding that balance of my responsibilities at work, not being more important than my responsibilities at home.
So I see you at Future Men, right? I walk by where Gabe hangs out in the mentor office to get to my office. So I'm walking by the window and I'll see him almost every day in front of a computer screen working on something he's doing for our projects, or maybe doing his devotions, but he's working. And it's like, is it a 9-to-5 job? No, but it's sort of like college. It's like I'm investing in my future right now. Not I'm laying in my bed, playing a game, or creating something that doesn't have meaning for anybody else other than me right now. That's the difference.
Yeah. Definitely. Because before coming to Future Men, that's kind of how it felt, was like, I'm not making money with any of the things I'm pursuing as far as like trying to study or develop hobbies or stuff like that. And it's like, it's not bringing in money. It's not building a future. So it's like, it was hard of like, should I just give this up?
Yeah.
Also, just to continue on with that thought, it's discipline of when something you enjoy as a hobby actually does become your career. It's so easy to get burnout of doing the same thing.
Yeah.
And you have to have discipline of when your hobby starts to feel like a job. Of when it doesn't have that like same, oh, this is new and fun anymore. Right. When it's like, it's your actual daily job and you have to actually commit to it no matter what it is.
Yeah, people who restore cars or like do something with horses, right? When suddenly that is required for you to have like a living, it can take the joy out of it. If it didn't come the right way, I look at you though, I'm excited because you were willing to obey your parents, go get a normal job. I hate to say normal because computers are a normal job, but you know what I mean? Something where it's like, there isn't somebody offering me this job doing computer stuff right now, but there is this hotel work that is being offered to me. I'm going to follow my dad's advice. I'm just going to work. But you kept praying. And then in your off time, you kept working on your skills. So if this is somebody's 14-year-old son, I'd be like, hey, just like any other good hobby, right? Put it in the category of how much time does it consume? Don't tell your son, I'm throwing away the iPad because you're on it again. Okay, put it in a place where you know he's not looking at porn. he's not just playing a video game, if he's actually doing something that's, productive, okay, it should fall in the same category of if your daughter was reading books, or me, I like to wood carve, right? Wood carving can become an idol like anything else. It's no more like holy or good just because it's not, evil in appearance. You're carving wood. Well, so what? It can be a waste of time, like hunting or golfing or any of those other things. Is like, it's got its place. And in a man's life, that place has got to be thought through a lot. So this parent had a great question. And I would say, especially at 14, yeah, you got to really regulate, like put some parameters to that. And there's nothing wrong with, okay, for half an hour every 3 days, you can just play a stupid Mario Kart, let's say, something lame that you're really not going to get anything out of, but you don't get anything out of watching like the Brady Bunch or me, wood carving necessarily either, right? So there's a balance. Find your balance. And if they're not willing to listen, oh, now we're on step 2, possibly step 3. We had a young man come to our program. He was older. He like just was the very tip of our age category. An amazing young man. I love this kid, but like screen time was his reason for coming because he would not leave his room. He would not put down the computers, and it was all about things that were not putting him into a way to produce with that. It was just destroying him. And the dad saw, okay, this is like that screaming of a bleeding issue, right? I've got to address it. So he took major steps and removed him from the home. And it woke the kid up. So anyway, all right. Well, that's it for today.
Yep.
Any final words, Zane?
Just, the usual. If you guys have any comments or anything, any encouragements or, just comments, thoughts on the episode, please email us at futurefamiliespod@gmail.com. And then you can like and subscribe and share the video with your friends. And yeah, we love hearing from you.
Join the school community.
That's right.
Because it's not always going to be free.
And
That
by the
window
way,
is closing
watch
soon.
these
The
last
first
2 episodes
100.
many, 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 many times, and Silas will think it got more hits because he wasn't here for it. So that would be great. So Silas, if you're listening, I love you, and we do actually miss you and can't wait to have you back. So
And I think I like this chair, so I might just keep it.
there you go.
Yeah.
Anyway, thanks for tuning in.
Have a great day. Bye.